All right, we're going to go ahead and get started. We'll start with the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
I'd like to thank you for the opportunity again to come together with the business of the county. We ask that you give us guidance with guide commissioner that they make decisions back in the county. We ask you to watch over and protect our employees.
There it is.
All right, good morning, everybody. I'll make a motion that we, last week.
I'll second it.
Motion been moving second, all in favor?
Aye. I make a motion, we pay the claims in amount of $747,399.93, which $625,140.63. So that's a debt service for the judicial system. That's my motion.
I'll second that motion.
Motion been moving second, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Okay.
The appraiser has transferred the appraisal rolls for real property and for personal property and gas to me last week. And there's a form that needs to be signed by all the commissioners. And she has to turn a copy of that into the state, and I have to keep a copy. So we need a motion to sign the 2023 transfer and certification of appraisal rolls for real property and for personal property and oil and gas.
I'll make that motion.
I'll second it.
Motion moving second, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
So I've got them kind of offset there, but there's a spot for all three of you to sign 4 times.
You got anything right off the bat? Anything else?
No.
You got anything?
Sometime fairly early in the meeting, right now, I need the executive session for legal matters.
How long?
Probably 15 minutes.
We'll comment on the appraisal rolls that we got in. We don't have the state assessed values yet. I should get them in 2 days because it's usually the first when they come out. But on locally assessed, we are up over 19 million in value this year.
Is that everything?
Sorry.
Are you good now?
I'm good.
AMR?
Good morning, Commissioners. Long weekend.
Thank you.
Since we last reported to you, we've had 23 page outs and 14 transports, and I know off the top of my head, two helicopter transports. I called Galen this morning to ask if he wanted me to relay anything to you, and he just said the June 3rd motorcycle rally in Pleasanton, we've got a fully dedicated staff or a truck for that event. There'll be dedicated standby there. And that's all I have.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Amanda?
morning, Commissioners. Amanda Snyder, Linn County Health Department. Just have some updates for you. Last week we had our skin cancer awareness promotion, and out of the 25 spots that we had available, they were all filled. So we had a steady stream of people in the building on Wednesday, and had some other appointments that were made because of that. We also attended the Lacing Block Party on Friday, which was at the Lacing Library, and that was to promote all of our summer events and activities. We are making progress on our satellite WIC clinic. We have received permission from the Lacing Library to use a room there one day a month to host WIC appointments. And then we're also working on a location in Blue Mound. We have an every door mailer that's getting ready to go out to every door in the county, every mailbox in the county. That is being printed and should be out in the mail hopefully by the end of the week. Our community baby shower is coming up very soon, June 23rd. Amber Minshew's been working very hard on getting our vendors signed up and getting donations and prizes for that event. I do need a volunteer to cook hot dogs, and I thought that would be a wonderful job for one of you commissioners, should you be interested.
I can
What
barely
date
do
did you
wrong.
say that was?
June 23rd.
What time?
It's from 5 to 7, but if you wanted to cook them a little earlier so they'd be ready around 4 o'clock maybe.
I'll do that.
Perfect. Thank you. Last week there was a lady here. I'm not sure who she was. I don't think she identified her name, but she had mentioned some displeasure in the health department not providing biometric screenings for county employees, or I guess further that we were not coming over here to do them. And I just wanted to say that I think that was some misinformation. We had reached out to the clerk's office to see if they wanted us to do biometric screenings at open enrollment. And there was some back and forth, and they ultimately said no because we do not have the ability to bill insurance for those. So it would be an out-of-pocket expense for our employees. It's still something that they could use their HSA account on. They could write us a check for that, but we are more than happy to come and provide that service if we are wanted to. So if that's something that we need to reach back out to the clerk's office and discuss, we are more than happy to. But I wanted you to know that that was something that we're more than willing to do.
I think it's something you just talk to them, and I mean, a lot of people don't understand what goes on behind closed doors, so it's, I mean, I don't,
Yeah, and we don't have any issue with them doing it. It was just the health insurance deal where if it goes through as a preventative service, it's paid at 100% on the insurance. It doesn't go to deductible. So for a lot of people, they'd be able to get it at no cost to them that way. But some people wouldn't anyway, depending on their health
Right.
situations.
Right. And we've sent information out to employees, letting them know that we have this service available. And maybe if it's something that the tests that they're having run aren't considered preventative anymore, that we can run them for them at a discounted rate as opposed to them going to their doctor's office. And our employees are aware of that. Friday afternoon, I got an email from the state, and they are wanting, by June 1st, a plan of action as to how we are spending our grant money. They want us to spell out ABC, this is what we're planning on, this is how much we're estimating these things are going to cost. And anything outside of that that we don't have a plan for, we need to plan to forfeit that money.
you're talking that one certain grant, or is this, or,
This would be all of the COVID grants. So there's 4 separate ones. There's also been some new stipulations come out that on some of those grants, they will not allow any construction services anymore. So, I know we had talked previously, the drive-through got started last week, and Todd said it should be finished kind of midweek this week. So that is started and almost complete. We had discussed the classroom, and then we had discussed the digital sign. Outside of paying for salaries and benefits, we will still have about $100,000 that needs to be spent.
Did the generator maintenance come out of one of those?
Yes. Yep. And that's already budgeted for.
Okay.
So this would be an excess amount that we need to figure out how we're going to spend. And if we don't want to spend it, that we'll just forfeit. So I didn't know how you,
How does the classroom work with if they're limiting construction?
so the grants that we have those funds left, are expanding testing, critical resource care, and expanding infrastructure. So those two grants will still allow us to use construction funds. It's the immunization grants that are saying no more construction funds. They're basically saying if that was something that you wanted to do, you should have done it prior. So the two grants that we have the bulk of the money in are okay for construction funds. I just need to know if that's something you're okay with. Are we at the point that, do you want Randy to come look at the space, draw something up, go out for bid? I just need to let the state know something this week. And they didn't give us a whole lot of time to do that.
What do you guys think?
I'm okay with the classroom site.
Need to get a bid on it and see what, I mean, it's,
So you just have to have a description of what you want to do. I mean, you don't have to have,
We just basically have to have, we want to install a classroom. This is how much we're budgeting for that. Not super detailed. They just want to have an idea of what we're going to spend the money on.
Did Randy already give you a kind of a rough estimate on that, I thought?
No. I believe Rock and H did at one point. The other thing with that in the classroom, are you interested in there being a safe room inside of it? Or do you just want a dedicated classroom space?
you have to have answers by tomorrow?
June 1st, which I,
Day after
Wednesday.
yeah.
Thursday.
Do you want me to try to get a bid with one without one?
Is, if you got a number from Rock and H that was an estimate, that would suffice for this purpose, wouldn't it, commissioners? I mean, he said, if what he described is what you're gonna do.
Similar, yes. I think I would lay it out a little different, but
Well, that
We
might-
can, we can base our request off of that.
if you're comfortable with that.
we just can't go over what the request is, I guess, or what, if, once we request this for the building. Is that the dollar figure we have? to
No,
spend, or-
no. I mean, I can put, say, 60,000, and if we spend less than that, great. And if we need to pull from another grant, we can. They just want to know a plan, that we have this money sitting there and they're saying, are you doing something with it or are we going to take it back?
Okay.
Is there, is all your maintenance on your machines and everything covered, or can it be covered by this?
It's already accounted for in there. Anything that I can account for has already been budgeted.
So right now, we're just making a tentative plan of what you want to do.
Yep. Okay, so we'll use that number for the classroom.
The other question she asked was whether you want a safe room in there.
Yes.
Guess you can get a, it wouldn't hurt to get a price. I mean,
And I have one from one company. There's another company in Kansas that I'd like to reach out to. They will come and install them. I'd like to see where their number comes in at, because the first one was pretty high. So if you're okay with me reaching out to them, I'll reach out to them as well.
I'm okay with reaching out. I mean, as long as later on we get a long-term plan on whatever thing, or whatever we do on it, you know, that's
Sure.
kind of where I'm at.
I'm not really interested in the safe room.
I'm not.
Okay.
In the safe room, ready to really spend money for that.
Okay. Let me ask you this. If it comes down to we end up having money that we have to return and the safe room is an allowable expense, would you be okay with that?
I'd rather send it back.
I would too.
Okay. So you'd rather us not have a tornado shelter in our building? Especially if we had clients in at the time that something happened?
Do we have tornado shelters in any other buildings?
I believe they do across the street. I'm just saying if we had the money to do it, and we would rather give it back.
I mean, do you have enough options to put yourself together a plan to send over to them?
I do, yeah.
And then we can maybe, when we make decisions later on, I mean,
Just because you include a safe room in this schedule
Right.
doesn't mean you have to do it. I think that's what you're saying.
yeah.
Right.
Well, and I'm just wanting to be upfront with you that that's not something that I'm really in support of.
Okay.
You know, I'm not trying to have you out there chasing down a problem that you don't have my support of.
Okay. Okay, then digital sign. Is that something you're still interested in, or would you rather us return those funds?
I'm not in favor of the digital sign.
We have a plan for it already, right? I mean, we already have.
We had received 2 bids previously. They would need to go back out for bid because they're old bids, but
But you could just put an estimate number together for these purposes.
I could, yes.
I don't have a problem with that.
I mean, you kind of told us in our last week's meeting that you didn't really feel it was a necessity.
Right, but at this point, when I ran the numbers, we have money for it. So where I'm coming from is we're never going to have this money again. If we decide this is something we want 5 years from now, we're not going to budget money out of county funds for it.
Right.
I mean, that's why these are expanding infrastructure grants. That's what this money's here for.
I mean, I'm open-minded, to whatever we can all think of, but like I said, with each grant, I'd like to see a pretty detailed line out, 5-year, 10-year layout of what it could do to the county or what kind of expense we have on it later on. That's really only my concern. I know right now you're just needing a description of what you can do, so
Right.
kind of.
And it just stinks coming in so late in the game for me because this money should have been spent a long time ago. And now we're at a crunch time and I have a lot of other things on my plate too
Right.
to get.
And I don't foresee that falling on you because we were
I know.
aware of it as well.
It just stinks that now there's all these stipulations and I wish we could have gotten it done. Okay. Well, I will budget accordingly. And do you have any other questions for me?
You just want to send David an email, he can forward it to us about kind of what your plan will be, what that you're going to submit.
Yeah.
to him.
Yeah.
And I don't think it's going to hurt to submit. I mean, even if it's a pipe dream, just to submit it and see what, I don't know. I mean, that's just my opinion, but
Okay. All right.
Thank you, man.
Thank you, guys.
is Kevin? Kevin?
Good morning, Commissioner. Kevin Friend, Linn County Sheriff. Total prisoners in are 50. This last week, we had 23 releases. Those numbers could look a little hokey because we had some releases yesterday in regard to your report this morning with the actual inmate releases because we released some of those yesterday, which the report would have usually been on yesterday. So yesterday it would have been 51 and 23. Today it's 50 and 23. Total prisoners farmed in are 31 from Wyandotte and U.S. Marshals. Total 911 calls this past week were 157. Total jail contacts were 4123. Total calls for service that we answered were 566. Served 22 civil service papers. We had 8 VIN inspections, opened 12 new cases, and closed 16 as of this morning. We worked 7 vehicle crashes last week. Of course, SROs are out, so SRO activities are nearly nil. I think that one was they attended some special event or something. Bailiff contacts, we had 166 in the front doors of the Justice Center and 37 calls for service based out of those people coming in. We had 5 livestock out calls. So that's all I have for you. If you have anything for me.
I have. So here, I think when Jason's first week or so, I brought in a bunch of contracts from towns and stuff, or from other counties that were similar to us about how the sheriff's department and the municipalities kind of contracted together. And that's still something I would like to, with budget season coming up, take pretty seriously and look into it and kind of see make sure we're doing it the right way. And
I think any of those types of contracts, Commissioner, would be between the municipality and the commission.
no, right, I agree. But I think it's going to take a lot of your knowledge and kind of how things, your background. And I mean, I can sit down, we could sit down and talk, outside the meeting, but I just kind of want to let you know kind of where I'm standing on that. So.
Sure, I appreciate that. I think for this year's budget season, of course, that would probably prove impossible
Right.
to get a municipality to be able to budget for that as well. So it's going to take a lot of, I think, commission and municipalities working together to kind of get that all in at the same time, if that was your wish.
Yeah. That's kind of where I'm at.
I had some communication with your counselor this week in regard to some tow company issues, and we've talked about that in regard to contracts and stuff like that that we have with them. And I don't know if that's what you might have wanted to cover in legal or anything with the commission. Probably that might be the best place for it because it's contractual. So if you weren't going to talk about that, I would request a visit with the commission for probably 10 minutes legal. But if you already had some time in there for that, Mr. Thompson, that'd be great.
Let's add what the sheriff was just requesting to our list of executive sessions. So we'd have a 15-minute executive session and a 10-minute executive session, both on legal, and the sheriff would be involved in the 10-minute one.
Thank you, sir.
That'd be great.
Anything else for me?
Do you have any other updates on the Tanglewood situation?
There's been 5 in custody. I don't know what the prosecutor's doing with the cases, of course, but those would be questions for him. And we currently have, I think, in-house right now, another 8 warrants. And we've requested probably another 20 some.
Thank you.
You bet.
Jessica?
Good morning, Jessica Hightower. I had an economic development meeting last week. We awarded some grant funding. First of all, the city of Parker will get a $2,500 sidewalk grant. They are working with a property owner. The property owner owns a corner lot, so they've got 2 stretches of sidewalk, and they have frequent kid traffic going back and forth to school. So the city and the county and the property owner are partnering to repair or build sidewalks right there on that property. Haley Beckman is opening a child care facility in Blue Mound. She received $250 for car seats and outdoor toys for her new child care. Melody Crooks has a child care facility in Pleasanton. She received $250 for sensory toys, balance toys that assist with development and education. And then we had Grady's Kids was awarded a $250 community development grant for their ride on July 8th. They can use it for food or advertising, supplies, things like that. I also received notification that we are awarded the high-risk rural roads grant that we applied for in February. This one, if you remember, is for 1095 between 1650 and 7 Highway. And it is designed to address some of the issues that came up in the local road safety plan. That road rose to the top as far as a safety risk. And this grant was designed to address some of those problems. So we have been awarded, let me find it, $351,000 for this project. If we accept, our matching portion will be $102,000. which I'm trying to find out if we can take that out of ARPA money or if we have to do that out of county funds. We have to let them know by July 1st whether we are going to accept that or not. So we've got a little bit of time. I've sent several questions to the person administering those grants. I have not heard back yet, but it was late last week that I sent them. So I was excited to see that we got it. There were only 19 awarded in the state. They were only awarded to counties, so out of 105, we're one of 19.
Just to be clear, these funds can be used for construction or
So-
only for design?
These funds, so the way this works, we have to pay for the preliminary engineering, which this is all included in this 102,000. The funds are for if we're going to repaint the road or put in new warning signs or guardrails or rumble strips. It's not for the actual road itself. Now,
It's not for eliminating dips or curves or anything like that?
no, we were talking, if we're going to accept this grant, I think we should look into paving that road before we mark it or put rumble strips on it. So that's going to be an added cost if we do that.
How long do we have to spend this?
It is for fiscal year 25. So I believe until June of 25. That's one of my questions. So we would have to resurface it next year if we're going to.
So how would that fall under Todd's plans for asphalt?
I haven't discussed it with Todd yet.
I don't know when we resurfaced it last. It's been a few years, but
It's been several.
Can you get me a list of all that grant info?
Yes, I'll email it to you. When I get answers to these, I'll come back so that we can have a better discussion. But I just wanted to let you guys know that we were awarded that. Do you have any questions for me?
Do you want to mention about the STARS program and the seat on the board?
Oh, yes. If I would like to sit on that board, if you would like to have a commissioner and me on the board, I'm good with that. Or if you would rather just have a commissioner, that's fine too. But I really think workforce development. I think that is what they're doing, and I think as economic development director, I can really help them if I sit on that board.
I think my motion and said something about having a commissioner set as a seat. I mean, I'm okay. I would rather probably not sit on it just because I've been so openly involved in, with Dr. Allen and pushing for it so hard. But I didn't know if one of you guys wanted to. But Jessica and I had talked, and I was in favor of. She asked, and I was like, yeah, that thing's gonna be a good idea. So, unless one of you guys want to sit on it.
I'm fine with her sitting on it.
it's fine. And she said, well,
Do you want to reach out to Dr. Allen and let him know?
I've already told him that I was interested. I think you probably need to make a motion to officially appoint me.
I'll make a motion that we appoint Jessica to sit on the newly reformed STARS board of committee, board of directors. That's my motion.
I'll second
Motion been moved and second. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Thank you. I'll let him know that it's official. Anything else?
Anything on the airport?
Still waiting.
Can we just put a for sale sign on it and see what happens, see what they do, if they come in faster and talk to us?
I mean, we would, if they decide that we can't do that, we'd have to pay the funds back. It wouldn't be the full 200,000, but it would be a prorated amount of the
Does it
200,000.
take them a long time to reply most time?
I would imagine so. We're waiting on their legal department. So,
it. Every year we wait, the taxes are quite a bit.
I mean, if that's a risk you guys want to take, then we can move forward. Or if you'd rather just wait for their decision, that's fine too.
What are our other options? Could we look at leasing it, doing something along those lines to?
So the requirement is that it remains a public access airport for 10 years after we received the grant funding. The last time we got grant funding was 2019, so it has to remain a public access airport until 2029. So I can't find anything that says that we have to operate it. just that it has to remain public access. We can't go tear the airstrip out. Or if we sell it to someone, they can't make it private use until 2029.
Thank you.
And we still have fuel out there in that tank.
Yep.
And we canceled that program, the card swiping program.
Yes, they had actually charged us 2 more times. Janet and I caught that. So they were refunding us the most recent 2 months. And then that would be March and April. If we decide to reopen it, we have to do it within 6 months. Otherwise, we have to start completely over with the account.
Come up with a plan on that fuel.
Fuel?
Yeah. Is it hurt if it's gonna sit there for a while or?
Shouldn't have any ethanol in it.
Probably not a good idea, it just sits there.
Percentages, the way this weekend.
There is gas in the tank. The pump isn't working. Yep, the pump is not working.
Oh, it's not working.
Yes.
Have you looked at selling that to Fort Scott or Reconvene?
The fuel? No.
I would say the best thing to get it out of the tank.
We can,
Instead of it sitting there.
okay, we can look into doing that.
Just need speed.
Mhm.
Maybe an opportunity, put an RFP out, fixed base operator.
Mm-hmm.
That's basically maybe an opportunity. Got some ideas, got some consultants. Sure.
Okay, perfect.
In the meantime, would it be out of context for us to try to figure out if we can sell the land that we're not using, that the strip's not on, and the plots that aren't sold, like whatever, the acreage towards the highway?
You're talking about trying to,
Split it off and get rid
split
of
it
it?
off.
There's roughly 70 acres on the west side of the runway towards the highway. There's also a portion that's not platted for any lots, north and east. So north of the platted lots and east of the runway. I do have someone, I have a list of people who have recently reached out about the airport. There's someone who's interested in buying the 70 and there's someone who's interested in buying the other portion on the other side. They're different people. So there's some interest there. I just don't know what we're allowed to do.
Well, I would suggest that you not get too big a hurry to sell it off in pieces in case you do decide you can sell the whole thing to somebody. I mean, you know, as far as splitting it off for tax purposes, we can do a lot split out there, split the hay ground off. We'll have to continue to pay taxes on that. And I presume that we would need, I'm not sure if we're going to have to split the hangar lots off or not. But we can have an exemption on the airport itself.
But right now, we're paying taxes on the whole thing because we're leasing out.
Because we're leasing the hay ground. I mean, the other option is to quit leasing the hay ground.
We can't mow it because there is an endangered milkweed in that field. The county is not allowed to mow it. I know. Little tomato cages out there.
Weed eat 70 acres.
What? And I know you're doing everything you can to get it moving, and I know that we're kind of sitting out on it because
I know. I can't make the legal department go any faster.
thanks for the update.
You're welcome. Anything else?
Thanks.
Okay, thank you.
I gave you a copy of Randy's report. I didn't see him here, but he sent
He
that.
had a meeting to go to. I think we've got an email from him.
For the Linn County Rural Fire Department, they had 8 incidents. 2 were the motor accident. 1 confined space rescue, smoke scare 1, building fire 1, cooking fire 1, fire and motorhome camper 1, motor vehicle accident with injury 1. And then year to date, we've had 105 or 185 incidents. Is everything with his new member on his team, is everything going good?
As far as I know, I haven't heard of any issues.
Do you got anything, Sean? Okay.
Sean West, Public Works Administrator. I have a few items that we worked on through the week. Commissioner McCullough, Darren and I met over at the Pleasanton Senior Center, looked at some opportunities there as far as clearing out the building and what some costs were. We didn't get any of the estimates yet, but they will be forthcoming in the next week or two. We are talking about bringing a group in of volunteers and cleaning out the building, removing items that are attached to walls, some wood framing, some storage items in the back areas. But I think we're going to have the building cleared out pretty shortly from what I understand. We had a request from Parker to do some road and mowing work around their lake or the roadway leading up to their lake. Mike went out and took a look at it. Looks like it wouldn't affect any of their other projects. Thinks it'd be 2 days worth of blading and 3 days worth of boom mowing as they get a time or opportunity to assist with that. But he's not believing that it's going to put back any of his projects or any of our asphalt or manpower issues. So if you're all right with that, I'll go ahead and head nod that and let him work with them to complete those projects.
That's for their city lake?
I'm sorry?
That's for their city lake?
Yes.
How do we usually do that?
I'm trying to, is there any place else that we go in and do that kind of work?
We boom mow for Pleasanton around their park. We blade in Blue Mound. Typically, if a city doesn't have this type of specialized equipment and it doesn't affect our operations, we have in the past. We certainly could bill fuel or anything that you ask us, but it's not something that you've had me do in the past for other small projects.
Were you in this job when we did that work for the school district at Pleasanton?
Are you talking behind the school?
Yeah, behind the school back in there.
I was there when we did part of it, yes.
I think, didn't they pay for part of that, as I recall?
I think fuel, wasn't it? And they, or we donated a tractor or a piece of equipment and they did the fuel, I believe, right? We had a man run it.
I don't
Harry put a little time in, I think.
We put some time in, but as far as the specifics on it, I know we brought the equipment down and we did everything that was south of the permittable area behind the dam. But I can't remember the specifics. I do know, like I said, we blade them in Blue Mound. I can't tell you what the specifics on that or the agreement on that is as well. I also know we mow round what would be the north side of the West Lake in Pleasanton occasionally when they call because they don't have a boom mower over there. So,
well, since these are municipalities, it's legal for us to do that. I mean, we couldn't go do that on somebody's private property, but we can use county resources on municipal property, even if it's not our municipality. The question is whether we have established a precedent in the past of charging for some of that stuff or not. I don't know.
We're obligated to maintain the connecting roads really with the cities.
If it's a connecting road, then it's
But
ours.
this is
Right?
Parker's Roads is what you're saying around the lake?
correct.
That's not a connecting road. That's a private road owned by Parker.
How you guys feel? Centerville's the only one that we have to maintain, right?
Right, Centerville's not a city. It's not a municipality. It's part of the county.
I mean, my opinion is if we're not doing something on the roads, we should be doing ditch work for ourselves, throughout the county. I'd rather see our guys working on that. But I mean, if we are doing stuff for the city, I'd like to see them reimburse us for something.
I agree with that.
Would you like me to have a representative from their city that can speak for them come in and speak to you about the project and what they're willing to do?
Be great.
I obviously can't negotiate
Can
anything.
we get with our foremen and just kind of figure if we started doing little things like this, what would be appropriate to charge them so that, because they're going to come in and ask us that.
I can tell you what the billable hours for the machine or the fuel would be. We've got it in our program. So
We just have that.
if you want to talk about fuel, I can break it down for fuel or man hours for the machine so you could know what those are.
And then to be consistent, whatever policy you establish here, you'd want to apply it to all the cities, wouldn't you? I assume.
Right.
Hey, Radcliffe Road is complete. I'll bring you the numbers. We're still trying to get all of that together to tell you what the cost is going to be. We are waiting on striping. Striping is going to be done by the same company that's going to do our overlay project here on Wall Street. So as soon as the striping's in and complete there, they'll do both projects at the same time. I should have you the numbers because we know what the striping cost is going to be. I should have you the numbers within a week or two to let you know what the total cost on that was. You should have received information on KDHE with 2 attachments that I sent to you with the landfill discussion with the cities and lakes. This is information for your information. Each one of those sites is governed by, you got 2 items. You've got an attachment that covers KDHE regulations, and you've got an operations manual or a plan that we put together that not only covers the landfill, but covers each one of those sites. That operational plan drills down into fencing, what items we take in, hours of operation. It drills into a little bit of detail, but the guides to all of this is whatever we put in an operational plan, we live with as far as what we told the state. If they agree to that operational plan, then that's what we agreed to, and that's the premise of our permit with them.
To do.
Correct. So moving forward, we can permit our sites, the compactor sites, we can permit our sites, and then the cities can permit their sites. But that whatever site or operation has to have an operational plan, it has to be present at the facility, and it has to be followed. So I'm sending that to you. So as we go through this with the cities and the lakes, you'll be more knowledgeable about how the process works and what is in that operational plan. There's nothing you need to do with it, but make yourself familiar with it to go forward in that conversation. Last week, I went around with rural water from the state, and we looked at sludge buildup at the county parks. I will have a report, but I can tell you what that report's going to say. It's going to say we were unable to sludge test cell 1 or the original cell at the park due to sludge. We were unable to launch the scamp in that cell because it was full. Cell 2 and 3, cell 3 are 32 inches a piece. So if it's no surprise that we've had to miss that operation for quite some time, and it's because those cells are either full or becoming full in the bottom 2. So we're going to look at cell repair and desludging of those, and I'll bring you the cost on that. But I need to go over those bids and find out what we can do. to reduce those bids as far as riprap. There are connecting tubes between those lagoons that are not similar, but are culvert pipe systems when they originally were put in. Things like the riprap and those connecting pipes and a little bit of the dirt work we can do and bring that cost down. But the cost that we're looking at or talking about originally, if they did all the work, would be $130,000. But to my understanding, that is the first or largest cost since the operation of that lagoon, and it's been there for decades. So,
Is
if
there
you,
a charge on like when RVs and campers come in to be able to dump like that? Is that figured into their daily price?
they have a daily fee that figures that in, and they also, anyone that dumps there that's hooked up to our system pays an accelerated rate not to have to move their camper and dump each day, or anyone that uses one of our sites at the park is allowed to use it because it's factored in on their site rental.
How much is that? Do you know? I mean, off the top of your head, like, do you know what it breaks down to?
What it breaks down to for the lagoon? No, I do not. And I don't believe you're going to find it broke down. I believe what you're looking at is site rentals with those amenities that we compared to other operations, but there's not an actual breakdown. We talked about the park house removal, and I apologize, I don't have some of the questions to answer for you. You wanted a estimated value, which I don't have yet, or some square footage on it. We did talk to Mike about what it would take to remove it once the utilities were disconnected. You would have approximately 4 trucks and a operator there for about a week. He thought maybe 2 if he had to separate it, but we don't have to separate the shingles from the construction materials. It can go all as one. So you're looking at basically separating construction materials and whatever metal or anything that's in there, and then crushing the tank. So I'm thinking we're going to be just over a week at that location with 4 trucks and an operator. And of course, you'd have to waive the dump fees for that. But Al couldn't give me an estimate on what the last 2-story structure as far as tonnage would be, but there still wouldn't be a cost to it. It would just be the bulk tonnage in the landfill.
Was that house already there when we signed contract with KCP&L?
I'm sorry?
Was that house already there when we signed contract with?
No, it was, the county built the
The
house.
county built it?
County built the house after the park was leased to Linn County way back. Actually, Bruce built a lot of it.
Bruce Holt?
And that 130,000 or whatever you said, was that per lagoon?
No, that's a total. And that would be sludging and repairs, but like I said, I need to go through that and make sure that
How
All
often
the-
are we supposed to do that?
when it fills up, it would depend on the status. From what I'm learning, there's not a timeline, because you can't judge that, but what you can do, the Kansas Rural Water Association will come down and do sludge testing for free at any point. So what we probably should do in the future is start sludge testing that on a probably 5-year basis.
Is there a budgetary line for that in the parks budget each year to save up for that, or no?
No. Cost share program for noxious weeds. Looks like to date, $2,679.96 has come out of that cost share program so far. We expect as we go forward in the year, we did last year, but we're expecting to use up all of those funds in that program. But I did want to keep you updated as we go along in that process. Kansas State Fire Marshal, I applied and was granted an extension for our boiler waiver for the courthouse. The contractor has ordered the parts for that, but our extension runs out at the end of the month, and those parts and that project won't be done. I asked for an extension for 2 months, and we were granted it with no problem. The only other thing I have for you is I'd like, if you would give me 10 minutes on executive time for non-elected personnel.
And you needed what? 10, 15?
I need 15 to cover some things, and then we'll add the sheriff in there for about 10 on another item.
I'll make a motion that we go into executive session for 15 minutes for legal with just us and Gary, and then 10 minutes, bring the sheriff in on top of that. And then we go back in for 10 minutes legal with Sean for non.
No, personnel, wasn't it?
Personnel.
Oh, sorry, 10 minutes for personnel non-elected.
Total of 35.
35.
I'll second it.
Motion moved, second, all in favor?
Aye.
All right, everybody, we're gonna go ahead and get started again. We had some action from executive session.
So you want to have the motion or?
Have you drafted a motion, David?
I think I got what we were talking about. It'd be a motion to authorize the county councilor to work with our insurance carrier to obtain an outside attorney firm to conduct an independent investigation into the incident that occurred at Tanglewood Lakes.
And, yeah, I think that's thorough.
I'll make that motion.
I'll second it.
Motion been moved and seconded. Any more discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Now we want to go back into executive session for 10 minutes for
Sean,
personnel.
10 for personnel.
Make a motion, we go back into executive session for 10 minutes personnel with Sean Wilson.
I'll second it.
Motion been moved and seconded. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
I don't know if Darren's gonna need a little time to get that set up.
I thought somebody said they needed 10 minutes.
All right, we didn't have any action. We're a little early for our 11 o'clock. Is there anything that we need to discuss before?
Do we need to read Burton's attorney letter?
I don't want to. I mean, I'd rather him address it.
Okay.
I mean, unless you guys want to.
Jim?
You want him to address that?
They ain't read it if you want to.
You want me to read it?
If you want to read it, okay.
So we were given a letter from the Office of the Linn County Attorney on May 22nd, 2023, at the Linn County Commissioners meeting. A large group of people attended in order to voice their concerns regarding the incident that took place at Tanglewood Lakes Community preceding Thursday. At that time, numerous individuals damaged the lake community's property by cutting down gates, removing the motors, card readers, power, and other infrastructure. I attended that meeting prior to my court cases beginning that day in order to give an update of the situation from my office's perspective and to answer any questions I could. After leaving, the discussion continued, and there were things said that I believe are factually incorrect, and the purpose of this letter is to correct the record where I am able. Immediately following the incident 2 weeks ago, multiple individuals were told my office was not prosecuting cases arising from damage to gates at Tanglewood and directed to call me personally about it. I heard the accusation again in the commission meeting and decided to take a look at all my files and investigate to see if there was an issue with cases being referred and not prosecuted as I was hearing. The following is what I have found after looking at all reports referred to my office for prosecution where Tanglewood was the victim of a crime. Since taking office in January of 2021 and not counting the most recent incident, my office has received 21 new probable cause affidavits and reports seeking charges for criminal damage to property on the gates at Tanglewood. From those 21 reports, 13 criminal cases have been filed in district court. My office declined prosecution on 3, and the rest are still pending charges. My office has been in communication with the Homeowners Association regarding the timing and the filing of those charges. Of the uncharged cases, some were awaiting the outcome of their trials, some were pending a decision in a civil matter regarding the lake community. In all events, those reports were personally reviewed and discussed with the board of Tanglewood. In addition, there was an individual who complained that he was the victim of a criminal threat and was told that the report was sent to my office for charging. Upon review, I found that no report with that individual's name was ever sent to my office. At this point in time, my office has received partial reports on 13 new cases, and charges have been filed on those cases. As always, the office takes all allegations of criminal conduct in the county seriously and will continue to review and file cases as reports are received. I take issue with and dispute any claims that we are receiving numerous reports on cases and not prosecuting. We have filed or prepared to file the vast majority of Tanglewood cases referred to the county attorney's office. Claims to the contrary are misinformed.
All right. Is there anything else? We're on the agenda until 11. Do you guys want to recess until 11, get this all set up and ready, and
Sounds good.
I'll make the motion that we recess until 11 o'clock, and we'll come back and discuss the zoning and subdivision regulations.
I'll second it.
Motion been moved and seconded. All in favor?
Aye.
Oh,
Okay, we'll come back. We'll come back to it. I totally.
I don't know if they have started the Zoom meeting yet for you. You should be able to just click on that link and it should. And if you haven't done any Zoom on this computer, they have to install for a minute or two to
Chris
to
and
get it ready.
Darren are gonna set it up.
did you have public comment? Yeah. That was what we were needing. That's what we missed. Well, that's what they were just telling us. Okay. Okay. Can we can do that maybe at the beginning of when we get back in session. Will that be fine? And then go into the zoning regs? Okay. Sounds good, Randy. Thank you. Is that all right with you if we do public comment right before the zoning regs? We get everything set up here and
Shouldn't take too long. Public comment 11, just 11. Yep.
It's only one more step to go.
I don't know how it would be on his end.
Oh, yeah.
You're on top of things.
Unfortunately, if I turn it up much here from the PA, it starts feeding back.
I appreciate you putting that in that statement, but
I can't do much on this side.
I haven't ever been called a genius before for anything.
I want to go.
Now we're moving.
I got there once, just click on it. We'll see what happens. There you go. I gotta type my name.
You can.
Do I need to?
I put mine in. No, it's you.
I'm great, Chris. How are you?
It's gonna admit everybody into the thing.
You gotta click on the video right there.
Right here.
Nope. Next one.
I don't really care if he sees me. Now here.
See.
You're good to go, huh?
Yeah.
Thank you, sir.
Yeah, because I got to just call him. I told him that we were going to be running a little late. So all I got to do is. Okay. Oh, okay. Yeah, no, you're good. You're the boss.
Welcome to Zoom. Enter your meeting ID followed by pound. Enter your participant ID followed by pound. Otherwise, just press pound to continue. Please enter the meeting password followed by pound. You are in the meeting now. There are 7 participants in the meeting. You have been added to the waiting room. You cannot talk or listen until the host admits you to the meeting.
Turn off your sound.
You are muted. Mute or unmute yourself by pressing star 6. You are unmuted.
Public comment. Just started it.
I know that's what I just, yeah, we're a little behind on that clock, so.
You are muted.
All right. Well, we're gonna go ahead and get back in session. We're gonna open it up for public comment
The
before
host would like you to unmute your microphone.
while they finish this up, so.
Star 6 to unmute.
At this time, if anybody wants to come up and have a public comment, just state your name and your reason for being here, please.
Hi, my name is Randy Adams, president of Tanglewood Lake Owners Association. First, I would like to thank you, the commissioners, for patiently listening to our concerns last commissioners meeting. I would also like to thank you for starting the process of looking into what led up to and during the event of May 18th. Thank you out to the district attorney who, with their office staff, in taking prompt action against the people that did the damage to our property. I'm happy to report that we did have the presence of sheriff's deputies at our community this last weekend. Due to the hard work of our maintenance department, our contractor and office staff, we have already taken great steps in to repair the damages that were done. We were able to cobble things together and at least get our gate 3, which is the main gate, operational. The other 2 gates are, the gates are up, but it's manual control only, and we padlocked those. We gave keys to all emergency, I feel like I'm in echo here, all emergency concerns so that they could have access to those points. We still have a couple issues. We did have 2 individuals cut the lock on gate 1 last night. So hopefully these people will be identified and picked up fairly quickly. But I do appreciate, on behalf of the board, of our members, everything that you've done so far, and we're very encouraged. Thank you very much.
Thank you, man. Anybody else? Are we ready to go up here, Chris?
Jason, we just need
Okay,
to.
where?
Oh, you're not.
My password's like, it's all these random numbers of it, I gotta get logged back into it. Okay.
Just let's leave computer on. You're in the right place.
So we want all the computers muted, right?
I can barely turn mine on, I don't know about even needing it.
Where the microphone down, you have a red line.
I thought it was coming through on
Everybody
David's.
else is showing they're all muted, see? Except it should be except for that one.
I'm connected to the church.
I know we were getting the feedback. Yeah,
No, it,
okay.
my Wi-Fi, I don't know, it's.
Your microphone, yep. Yeah, I didn't hear it. I want to see if it was gonna tap through.
Quit picking on
Now it's got me as muted.
Oh, okay. Yes, sir.
Okay, thanks.
Sorry about that.
You're all right. Thank you.
I like paper. I'll take it back.
Good morning, Commissioners. Darren Wilson, Planning and Zoning Director. Picking up where we left off from 2 weeks ago when I had brought the recommendations from the Planning and Zoning Commission. We've got Mr. Kaup on Zoom here. Can you hear us, Mr. Kaup? Okay. I am actually going to turn it over to you, and the commissioners have questions, and I don't know if there'll be public comment or not. But I'm going to turn it over to them so they can speak to you.
So I think what item we start on the solar panels? Or I guess,
I'm just do his update.
yeah, if you just want to start wherever you want to start, we'll sit here and listen. If we have questions, we'll ask.
Yeah, I would like to make a quick comment. I appreciate you allowing me to participate this way by Zoom. I would much prefer to be face to face. Circumstances just didn't allow for that. So thank you for this opportunity. And because I've not had a chance to meet with the Board of County Commissioners yet for this project, I wanted to say two quick things. One is, this has been a rapidly moving project. I don't know what your perception is of, you know, the 6 months, 6 months to 6 months, that's when we started this project 6 months ago, but we're just nearing completion. And it's been moving very rapidly. A lot of time and effort has been spent on it. It's one of the quickest moving projects I've worked on in 30 plus years. And the reason that we've got so far so quickly is because the planning commission and Darren have spent a great deal of time, effort, they've been fully engaged. And I just want you guys to know that, you know, regardless of how this all plays out, if you agree or disagree with certain aspects of the regulations, the planning commission and Darren have done good service to the people of Linn County. It's been a pleasure working with them. So, Commissioner, excuse me, I am not full speed here, so bear with me. I understand there are questions regarding both solar and wind. Allow me to make one of the comments to it. The issues of solar and wind energy consumed a great deal of discussion time and meeting time with the planning commission and a lot of drafts and redrafts. And I don't want to characterize it as a tail wagging the dog, because I know these issues are important to the people of Linn County. But there's been a lot of other features in the regulations, the proposed new regulations, that I think will serve the county well. And it kind of, you know, subsumed a little bit by the other more prominent issues. But we've made some, the planning commission and I are recommending to you a number of really positive features that I think will serve the county well in the years to come. So,
Mr. Paul, can you just, since you're on camera and it's on YouTube and it's live feed, can you just explain to everybody what your role in this was and kind of how you guys got to where you're at, what you do?
Right. Well, I'm an attorney at the solo practice up in Topeka. I practiced municipal law for many years. I was general counsel for the League of Kansas Municipalities years and years ago, and special counsel to the Association of Counties on a couple occasions. My practice has been focused on representing city and county governments, and primarily in land use planning and zoning. And I've worked in a lot of cities and a lot of counties around the state over the last 35, 40 years. I've just kind of in the twilight of my career. This is likely my last project before I retire. The county contacted me towards fall of last year to say that they were looking for proposals for an update, a revision to the subdivision regulations, zoning map. And I put a proposal in and was hired, I think it was sometime in November or late October, early November of last year, and started in on the project. First meeting with the Planning Commission, I believe, was in late November. So again, that was about 6 months ago. And we've been making steady progress over that period of time. So does that answer your question?
I think so.
Okay. You got a nice looking county, by the way, folks. Okay. I imagine you're well aware of that. You got good people and it's a beautiful county. I grew up in Western Kansas, and so I have an appreciation for landscapes that have a little bit of terrain to them, which you have, and trees, which is nice, nice, and water. I forgot that.
So you would say you're not 100% up to speed. Darren, do you want to step up and just kind of what we'll be talking about today and what the questions and concerns are at the table?
So I think the things that was discussed last time was obviously the prohibition on wind. And we wanted Mr. Kaup to answer questions about that, and then some setbacks on solar. And I think that was,
Yeah, let me.
The cap on.
yeah, the 4,000 acres cap on solar.
The question of sale agreement, being reviewed prior to the condition.
Correct.
So let me respond to the solar issues first, okay? The setback and the 4,000 acre cap. The setback requirement, which is by my reading and in talking to other folks, other counties around the state, it's not a severe, not a demanding setback that's been recommended to you. It's 150 feet for a project that's over 20 acres, and then less for projects that are smaller than 20. And you'll hear me say this over the next hour or so. It's a number. Those are numbers. It was the best judgment and consideration of the Planning Commission. Nothing magic about it. Like I said, 150 feet is not uncommon in the regulations that I've read around the state. The break point that we picked was some acknowledgement that 150 feet, if it were applied to a small project, say a 5-acre project, that's pretty severe, pretty demanding upon the project. So we hit a break point of 20 acres before the deeper setback requirement sets in. That number, if you were displeased or concerned about the setback side and chose to send it back to the Planning Commission for further consideration, I would probably suggest to the Planning Commission taking a look at whether that 20-acre breakpoint should be increased. Maybe that higher setback should apply to projects that are 160 acres or 50 acres, whatever, rather than just as low as a project that could be as small as 21 acres. Another way to approach it would be to lessen the setback requirement, to drop it from 150 down to 100 or 75, whatever seems reasonable. Another approach would be to rely upon a variance procedure where you have a set figure, let's say 150 feet, just like it is right now, but empower the Planning Commission and then the Board of County Commissioners to make exceptions to that, not through the Board of Zoning Appeals, but through the regulations themselves. Upon make a certain finding that because of the lay of the land, the proximity of a property line to say a stream bed or something like that, where a setback from that portion of the property line is really overkill. You could make findings that the 150 feet setback is not necessary and a lower one. So I guess the point, Commissioners, is there's multiple ways to deal with it. If you all, in your judgment, think the 150 feet is too demanding a requirement.
Should we have
On the
So on that, you're saying that we could do a variance in in certain circumstances or something that way. Does that do anything to relinquish our, zoning regs if like one of our first cases is coming through for a conditional use permit and we're doing a variance?
No, what I would propose, or the way I would do it, if wanted to go that route, would rather than call it a variance, which has consequences under state law. You know, there's certain criteria for granting a variance, and the variance is to be granted only by the Board of Zoning Appeals, and the Board of County Commissioners is not a player in that. So my suggestion would be to incorporate within the regulations the basis for which the Planning Commission could recommend a lower setback requirement on a given application. And again, that has to come back to you guys for final say. But otherwise, if you went just a straight variance route, the variance is granted by the Board of Zoning Appeals, and then any legal appeal from that decision goes directly to district court. And you guys, the Board of County Commissioners, are cut out of that process. So I would suggest, if the Planning Commission were receptive to it, I would suggest a process whereby something other than calling it a variance, some exception from the setback is appropriate upon certain findings by the Planning Commission. And again, last word, final say by the Board of County Commissioners.
Should we have somebody speak for the board or the planning and zoning?
I would say just keep moving. Just wait until it gets.
There we go.
A lot of these things, I think,
We discussed it to the point.
you know what you're thinking about. I think at this point, they're wanting to hear what you guys think.
Okay.
Okay.
Mr. Kopp, do you feel that the planning and zoning board spent ample time in all their decision-making on each section?
I'm sorry, could you repeat that, please?
I said, do you feel that the planning and zoning board spent ample time on each decision-making on each section of the regulations?
Well, a lot of the regulations got dealt with in pretty quick order, but it was pretty straightforward stuff. The most thorough discussion were on issues relating to the creation of some new zoning districts, provisions for accessory dwelling units, and then a lot of time and attention on both on solar in particular, and to a lesser extent, the discussion on wind. But there's been a lot of time spent, and the Planning Commission also conducted their own workshops where I was not present. So they've devoted a lot of time. So I guess the short answer to your question was yes. I believe the Planning Commission is fully informed and aware of the provisions, all the provisions of the regulations. They did a good job.
All right. What's our next item?
The 50% limitation on solar.
On the prime farmland?
Yeah.
Yeah, that was an initiative by the Planning Commission. I did not come up with that idea. It is a reflection of the, I think, very sincere belief by members of the Planning Commission, the need to protect the rural character and agricultural base of the county. So I praise them for that. I mean, that's there's a lot of sensitivity to the character of the county. There was a concern that solar projects, I believe this to be a fact, because it makes sense. If I'm going to undertake a solar project, I'm going to look for a ground that's ready to go. And what does that mean? Well, I'm going to be steering towards cultivated land. You know, it's already flat and ready to put the panels up on. I don't have to levee a hillside or take down a woodland. It just makes sense. It's to develop that property. there is a sensitivity on the part of the Planning Commission to preserve prime agricultural land, to not take it out of production if that could be avoided. So the provision was put in, and that 50% is, again, just a number. It's just a number, nothing magical about it. But the principle there was to encourage projects to avoid locating on prime ag land. And if they did, then under the terms of that provision, the project might have to take in a little bit more land than it would otherwise in order to make the numbers work. But there's a legitimate basis for the regulation itself. Is the 50% figure magic? No, it is not. But that is the peanut there. That's the desire was to encourage projects to look for locations other than on prime ag land.
And how are we defining the prime ag land?
Well, that's a good one because we spent some time trying to come up with that. Prime ag land is set out in the definition section, and it's really a reference across to how the USDA defines prime ag land. And there's a little bit of probably a little bit of discretion involved in coming up with it. The concept, if you could, the concept running throughout the regulations for solar was to put put requirements out there and require the applicant to fill in the blanks. The applicant has to provide the information. The applicant has to make the case that the principles of the regulations are being met. So the burden would be on an applicant to show that, or to put forward to the county that this land is prime ag land or not, consistent with the definitions in the definition section for prime ag land. But the responsibility for identifying what is prime ag land would be placed, at least initially, on the applicant. And then the county would confirm that through their own consultants or their own staff. So, we're trying throughout I'm repeating myself, gentlemen, so forgive me, but the concept for the solar was to set out the regulations, put the burden upon the applicant, not on the county, to put forward the information. And if the county needed outside advice, engineers or botanists or whatever it is to evaluate the application, then the county would do so, and the cost would be borne by the applicant, not by the county taxpayers.
Jim, it has been suggested that the 50% limitation and then the 1% total limitation on prime ag land are unnecessarily duplicative. That's the word for it. That maybe we don't need both those. What are your thoughts?
Well, I would agree to that up to a point. When you get over to the 4,000 acre cap, that was your reference to the 1%, right?
That's correct.
Right. There is overlap. The prime ag land exception or provision is geared specifically towards prime ag land and protecting and preserving that component of the county's cropland. The 4,000 acre cap, which to my knowledge is unique in Kansas. Okay, so I'm not praising it or criticizing it. I'm just saying that it was something that came up with in order to address the concerns of the Planning Commission that the county, that every time you turn a corner driving across the county, you're going to see a solar farm. Okay, I mean that was, in blunt terms, that was it. That how much of the county might be suitable for and end up as a project site. So the 4,000 acre cap, and again, 4,000 is a number, nothing magical about it. but the 4,000 acres was to address that concern that the county would become more of a solar farm than an agricultural operation.
Any other questions on solar stuff?
Wildlife corridors and,
Yes.
the detail that we have in there regarding the wildlife corridors, is that once again something where we're just allowing the companies to come up with their definitions, or should we be defining in more detail?
Well, again, that was an initiative that was put to me by members of the Planning Commission, and I think it's a smart idea. I wish I'd come up with it myself. It is not an uncommon feature in regulations that I've seen from around the country. To answer your question, Commissioner, the concept again was to put the requirement out there to say that there shall be on certain size projects, there shall be wildlife corridors, and then require the applicant to put meat on the bone to say, this is our proposal, this is why it'll work, this is how it will address the principle behind the requirement for the wildlife corridor. Every piece of land is different, and migratory patterns, what wildlife is where and how it travels is different one place to another. And to try to put a highly detailed set of regulations in there, fence has to be so high, openings have to be so wide. You could go on for pages and pages, and just felt it was better. It made more sense to put the onus upon an applicant to say, under the regulations, my project is required to have wildlife corridors. Here's our proposal. And again, it may be something that the county staff and the Planning Commission and you guys can evaluate on your own without any outside help to determine whether it's adequate to protect the interests of the county, or you reach out, you bring in a consultant to evaluate it and make a recommendation to you. And again, the cost of that consultant is borne by the applicant.
The next item's the.
But bottom line, I do recommend that provision to you guys. I hope it stays in the regulations, whether it gets revised in some way or another. I think it's a good feature.
Okay.
I think the other question was about the contracts.
The sale agreement?
Yeah, the sale agreement.
Yeah, there was some discussion that the clause that requires that if there's a sale agreement in place, it be included with the application. That first of all, that was maybe a little confusing in the way it read. You and I read it that if there's an agreement there, it has to be provided. The others were reading it that there has to be an agreement. And I don't think that that's practical. And then the additional issue about that, Jim, was that many of them felt like the details of their agreements would be confidential, but perhaps an affidavit or some sort of proof of the agreement, if it exists, might be reasonable.
Yeah, good questions, Gary. And yes, you and I read it the same way, that it's always it was intended to mean if there is such a purchase agreement in existence, then it would be disclosed to the county. I believe the county could avail itself of provisions of the Open Records Act to keep that information confidential if it so qualified. It would not offend me if the commission wanted to delete that provision in its entirety. It was put in because I'd seen it in numerous other regulations around the state of Kansas. And at the time that the draft was being put together, the state legislature also had there was a bill or two in that related to these purchase power agreements. And I don't want to offend anybody that might have a brother or sister in the Kansas legislature, but you know, those folks, there are moments when they really don't know what they're doing, and it was pretty confusing trying to follow that legislation as to what the real agenda was. The reason I would say would not be upset if you deleted that provision or wanted to have that provision deleted is I think at some point the state of Kansas, for better or for worse, is going to control that issue. And either, I think they're going to take the matter up and deal with it at a state level. So I know that's not a very good answer. As it is, as written, it's pretty innocuous. It just says if there is such an agreement, then it'll be provided to the county. And again, as I mentioned a moment ago, if there's issues of confidentiality, business secrets, then the Open Records Act has an exception for that would apply. And it could be, as Gary said, it could be submitted in an affidavit form, separate and apart from the other application materials. That's not a whole lot of help, gentlemen. I appreciate that. So do what you want to do.
All right, I think that's it on that.
Solar.
So, Mr. Kalp, on the prohibition for wind regulations, the commissioners asked to see the regulations that you had written in the beginning before the prohibition had been decided on. And I provided that to them. And the conversation that you and I had was that you would want to add some language to that because you just stopped working on them when the prohibition was decided on. Can you explain to them some of that?
Right. Well, that's a pretty good summary right there, Darren. My initial recommendation to the Planning Commission was to take a regulatory approach on wind energy as opposed to a prohibition. And so the initial draft regulations that I came up with and submitted to the Planning Commission was roughly analogous to the set of regulations for solar, in terms of development plans, construction plans, decommissioning, financial assurances, things of that nature. And then the Planning Commission, we, after significant discussion, advised me that they really wanted to go with a prohibition. And so I put the regulatory language aside. And if you wanted me to revisit that, I would want to go back and see if it needed additional tweaking. But let me back up for a moment, because I know this is an important issue, and I guess it's fair to say a controversial issue in the county. While I would stand by my initial recommendation for a regulatory approach, the rest of the story there is, and I advised the Planning Commission of this in open session, that my thought was, if you take a regulatory approach to the draft and put it in front of the public for purposes of the public hearing, you're going to get input. And the input could go one of two ways. The input could be that the regulations are missing a point, they're defective or deficient in a certain way, but they could be addressed by refinement. Those concerns could be addressed by refinements to the regulations. So that's one. The other input from the public could be that they're essentially under no circumstances are wind farms, commercial wind farms, in the best interest of the county. They conflict with the principles of protecting, preserving rural character, and agricultural base. And if that were the prevailing sentiment coming out of the public hearing, then the planning commission would have a strong record to support a position, recommending a position to you all of a prohibition against commercial wind farms. I'm not criticizing the planning commission at all, and not in any respect at all. I respect their position, and it was a strongly held position that they wanted to put forward for purposes of the public hearing the prohibition on the commercial operations. I do know because of comments that I've heard from folks that and whether or not the county is at some risk by going one route or over the other. You haven't asked me this, but I would tell you that I think the county would be in a strong position in defending whatever decision you guys decide to make. On the prohibition side, we have appellate court decisions in Kansas that support county action to zone out commercial wind farms. That's out there, and you have provisions coming out of your comprehensive plan that show significant opposition by some members, a portion of your constituency against wind energy. So and you know that regardless of what decision you make on this, you enjoy a presumption of legality, that the burden is on somebody challenging a regulation, whether it's a regulation or a prohibition. The burden is upon that party to challenge the county's action. You have the presumption that it's a valid regulation or a valid prohibition. On the regulatory side, what you have in front of you, I don't know that I would be concerned that any provision, any of the regulations on their face could be successfully challenged. I think they're reasonable. They've got a basis in other counties' regulations, or elsewhere around the country. I think they're legitimate. They're demanding but reasonable regulations. What that translates to, if there were to be a challenge if you took the regulatory approach, forgive me here for stumbling around, but if you as the county commission chose to take a regulatory approach as opposed to prohibition, then any litigation that might result from that is, in all likelihood, is going to come from in the form of an applicant who is denied a conditional use permit and contends that the regulations as applied to their project were unreasonable or unlawful in some way. And that's, again, a difficult challenge, but not impossible. But bottom line is, like any decision that you guys make, you act in the best interest of the county. And if people take exception to that, they take exception to it. But the county commission makes the call. Nobody else makes a decision as to what's in the best interest of the county.
Was there any support for wind farms at the public hearing?
No, I don't recall any, Commissioner. The public hearing, what was presented to the public was the proposed prohibition on commercial operations, and the folks in attendance, the ones that spoke on the issue, just spoke positively about the ban on commercial operations. But nobody spoke up, to my recollection, and I think I would remember this. Nobody spoke up and said that the county should open up the doors to commercial wind farms.
Anybody else got any questions for him?
I don't.
Darren?
I don't think I'm providing a whole lot of guidance to you guys. But you know, I've done this work for a long, long time. I've dedicated my career to local government, and I have a lot of respect for local elected officials. And I never put myself in a position of telling elected officials what they have to do. Okay. Now your county councilor can do that 'cause that's his job. But you know, you guys, and once again, I know I'm repeating myself, and I'm not pandering to you. It's a fact that you make the decision. You are the elected officials. You make the call on what is in the best interest, and then you take it from there. And if you have some concerns about any provisions of the draft regs, whether it's solar or wind or anything else, I would urge you to do what's provided for under state law and send those back to the Planning Commission for further input, further consideration. I will lecture you on this, okay? That is the scheme of that's the scheme under the state law is to empower and show respect to the Planning Commission and the job they do by asking for their further consideration rather than just overriding the recommendation, which you can do legally. I'm sure you know that, but if there's anything that you think needs to be tweaked or revised or gutted, whatever it is, I would urge you to give first consideration for sending it back to the Planning Commission for additional input.
Jim, if the commissioners were to do that, send back maybe asking for more detailed findings about some of the specific things we've talked about here today, would you be available to assist them in that, in catching those findings?
I'm under contract with you guys, and I'm still alive. Okay, I would tell you this, and I really cannot. I'm not allowed to travel for a few more weeks, and I don't know how that. I don't know how that fits into you guys' time schedule, but I cannot travel for the next few weeks, but I would. I take a lot of responsibility on projects I work for. I'm accountable to you all. You know, it goes beyond just being under contract. I mean, it's a personal thing for me. So I want to be on this project until it gets adopted by you guys in whatever form.
Very good. Anything else for Jim?
I don't think so.
I don't have anything.
Jim, appreciate all the time and effort you put in and working with everybody.
It was an enjoyable project. It has been enjoyable. I don't want to beat that point to death, but you know, you got a bunch of unpaid people over there, and then you got Darren, who I'm sure is just awash in riches from you guys. But you know, your commissioners, whether you agree or disagree with them, they devoted a lot of time and energy and were fully engaged. And again, over my career, sometimes that's a situation, sometimes it's not, you know, but you've got a good group of people working for you.
Thanks a lot, Jim. We're going to.
Thank you for your time, gentlemen.
Thank you.
Here's I hang up right here.
Goodbye.
Well, so what's our options, Gary? I mean, what can we do here?
Okay. First option is you can simply rewrite these regulations the way you want them and say, that's the way it is, if you can do it unanimously. Second option is to reject them outright. The third option is to send them back to the Planning and Zoning Commission, Planning and Zoning Board, with some specific requests for looking at certain things, to make more specific findings, to alter this or alter that, or to consider doing so. You send them specific written points of interest. It goes back to them. Then they determine if they're going to comply with those or not. They can, at that point, send you right back the same regulations that sent you before, or they can attempt to do what you've asked them to do, and send it back. And then when it comes back, any decision you make is by a majority vote as opposed to a unanimous vote. So what I would suggest, I don't know how, I haven't talked to anybody on the board, but I would suggest that you give this some thought and let me kind of draft what I think are some of the things you might want to send back to them.
Like the questions per item?
Yeah. Some things that you might want to send back for clarification. Let me draft that over the next week, get it back to you. And then, if you like that or some version of that, act next week to redirect that to the commission. If I mean, that's the cautious route that I would take.
So how long would it, I mean, when's your guys' next meeting? Would you just call it a special meeting or how?
We would probably if you sent it back, we would probably just do a workshop and work through those items.
So should we set a specific date on what we're gonna do? I mean,
I think you should be prepared to act next. I mean, if you're going to do this, let me draft it this week, get it to you to look at before Monday.
Okay.
Be prepared to act Monday. You can even give me individual feedback. I'd like to see this change or that change. You know, I can't tell any of you what the others have said.
Right.
But I can take your individual feedback, so that you can be prepared to act Monday to either, to do whatever you're going to do, to send it back with some requests for clarification or to approve it or whatever you're going to do.
with each item, is there anything specific that we should be, if we did go send it back to them, that we should be asking? We can talk about that next week. Huh?
I think we'd talk about that next week, but the main thing is we want specific findings on anything that restricts anybody's property rights. That's the main thing. Because when we go to court, if we ever get sued, we go to court, the issue will be, did we follow a reasonable process in restricting this person's property rights, whether it's a company or an individual? Well, what makes it reasonable? It's reasonable if we looked at all the options and we had good justifications for the steps we took. And so that's where we make the just detailed findings. We don't have to make detailed findings on every paragraph in these regulations, just the ones that we think will be controversial.
Well, I thought Mr. Kopp said that pretty well,
He said it, but we don't have any written findings. That's what I'm saying. I said they need to be in the record. I know that the board discussed these issues, and probably anything that they would need to do now would be just to distill that into some points of findings and get it back to us. But it's got to be in the record. We can't just say, well, yeah, sure, we talked about that. It's got to be in the record, and that's where I'm pushing for.
So should we go ahead and set a final date for the final approval of the regulations, like the end of June? I guess we can't, because we might have to send it. Okay.
Yeah. I think I would just commit to trying to be prepared to act next week on whether you're going to send it back to them or not.
Well, I'm in favor of sending it back for details as far as what they've considered and why they decided as they did, so that we're covering our bases from that standpoint.
So you're talking about
No.
No,
That's what I just said. We're not talking about every paragraph in there.
just on these controversial ones.
So I'm in favor of us, given what we have, these notes, give it back to Gary. He come next week with the line items of what we would like to discuss and send back to you guys with answers. Is that kind of where we're at?
That's my suggestion. If you want to do something different, I'm okay with that. But
Can I give
Yeah, if you want to stand up and say your name and.
Yes, the Planning and Zoning Board did a lot of work on this, spent a lot of time on this, and there's other counties that have banned it and no problem with that. I've had with Topeka, talked to some of the people in Wynn, and they don't want to go into a county that's not wanted. There's a lot of counties, or a number of counties that have banned and no problem, you're not going to get sued. This deal of rejecting the ban here and wanting to tweak it is going to be your responsibility. You're going to be held responsible for doing away with the ban.
Just a minute, sir. I think they're not talking about doing that.
Well, they're talking about putting restrictions. If you're going to allow them in with restrictions, you're doing away with the ban. And that's what we're talking about here. You're talking about they come in with the ban and now you're trying to change that.
That's not the case at all. That's not the case at all. That's not what they're talking about. They're talking about asking for some specific justifications for the decisions they made in support of the ban.
Correct.
Written justification.
Yeah. They're not talking about adding making any changes.
So we've already had a public hearing and we've already went through this. How does the public have a part of that?
Public already did. That's what the public.
Yes, they did. And they made their wishes known. Yes.
And my understanding, I'm not trying to prejudge this, but my understanding is that these three commissioners are all in agreement with that.
Yes.
They're all in agreement with the ban.
We just want to make sure that everything's covered in the due process of this, that we have the proper justifications, that we have the proper findings to support our claims.
Did you have a letter from an attorney about that? The proper justification for the ban is proper?
Yeah.
Yeah. You have that already.
Right.
Good. Dan, can I make you're talking about a timeline?
Can you step up so they can hear you, Mike?
I can hear you.
We're not doing a timeline. We're not doing a timeline.
So, Mike White, Planning and Zoning. One of the issues that we have when we start discussing these issues is that we really discuss them thoroughly. And it's time consuming. And when you give us a short date, it makes it difficult for us to be able to.
We're not setting a date on it.
Okay, that's what I'm asking. Please don't set a date on it.
Okay, thank you.
Would it be fair to say none of us are against the ban, but all we want is a written detail of why we chose to go the direction we went?
That would be correct for me.
I'm just trying to make sure we're doing the right thing for the long term of this county. I mean, I'd like to know the rhyme to the reason.
Since Mike got up, I want to get up too. Okay. Charlene Sims, Planning Commission. I'm just going to go through a long thing here. I'm going to have to read it so I get everything in. As a planning commissioner, I feel like it is my duty to represent all landowners in Linn County as best I can, not just the squeaky wheels. Some landowners want to work with wind turbine companies. I also feel that it is my duty to protect the county from arbitrary decisions that can take an issue to court in the future. And in my decisions, I also use the comprehensive plan as a guide to my decisions. The plan does not prohibit wind turbines. Approximately 66% of the people who answered surveys were against wind turbines. At the same time, I have to look at the push at the time of the survey to get a specific group of people to complete the surveys. At the public hearing where the question was asked how many people were against wind turbines, there were 3 of us that were watching the audience, and it was about 50-50. You know, because Darren asked that question. How did you put that question, Darren? How many of you don't want them, or how many of you do want wind turbines?
I think I asked both ways, how many want it and how many don't.
And so the people that I had that were watching, it was like half and half.
You didn't ask the question.
It was
You did
wind.
not ask the question.
I think it was wind.
Pretty sure.
It was wind. On the wind turbine issue, I voted against prohibition, not because I'm for wind turbines, but because I listened to the advice of the attorney that we had hired to develop our zoning regulations. He said that a prohibition would be harder to defend in court than strict regulations. I also heard the opinion of County Councilor Gary Thompson, who also said that a prohibition would be harder to defend. I think Roger interviewed you on that.
let me just say, what I have tried to say, and I have not said it very clearly, I'm not nearly as articulate as I remember myself being. What I tried to say is an arbitrary prohibition is illegal.
Right, without findings.
Not fine.
Okay. I also talked with a friend who's an attorney who said the same thing. I'm really not sure why we hire qualified people and then ignore their opinions. The lawsuit that Mike White talks about in Wabunsee County was about landowners suing the county for not allowing them to have their rights to make a contract with a wind turbine company. It was not as clear cut as Mike says. It was appealed and sent back to the district court and ended up costing the county lots of time and money. For that reason, I voted against prohibition. The issue has been brought up about prohibiting windmills in the Kansas legislature and has failed more than once. What happens when a company with deep pockets, like Effigy, sues the county because they want to put up windmills close to their generating station? Do you think the Kansas Supreme Court will go for Linn County? Do you think, or when a company like Effigy throws a lot of money into the political coffers of Kansas legislators, do you think they will go against Effigy? I don't think so. If counties continue to enact strict prohibitions, it is my opinion that this will end up with counties unable to stop wind turbines at all, just like the cell tower issue. And then Jim asked about how much time was spent on it and how thorough it was. This is my opinion of our meeting. As for good discussion being held in our meeting about wind turbines, I don't feel like you can really have a good discussion when one person does not look at the big picture and keeps telling everybody that it will never go to court because it failed in Wabunsee County. This person tends to bully his opinion across at meetings, and if that does not work, he walks out. He blows up at the attorney, Mr. Kopp, or he blows up at another planning commission member. This is not conducive to having a good discussion. While it would not have changed the vote on approving the zoning regulations, I'm sorry that I did not vote no on them because prohibition of wind turbines was in there. The reason I did not vote no is because I believe the county councilor would explain the complications with having a strict prohibition, and the commissioners would choose to include strict regulations over prohibition or findings. I will go along with the findings, but I think we're going to have a hard time doing the findings. But unless we change how we run our meeting. And one last thing, I wanted to ask Mr. Kopp if he was really involved in the Wabunsee lawsuit. I don't think he was. I can't find anything that says he was involved in that. I meant to ask him that. And you talked about him talking out of both sides of his mouth because you said he was involved in that lawsuit. So, anyway, that's what I have to say.
Thank you.
Got one more in the back.
Go ahead. Sorry, Darren.
Appreciate the opportunity. I will be brief. Again, David Levy, Baird Home Law Firm in Omaha. We represent EDF Renewable Energy, which is a developer of renewable energy projects across the United States and has land signed up in Linn County and interest in building a utility scale solar project in Linn County. I was here a few weeks ago, and as I said, I've worked on these regulations across numerous states for about 15 years now, and I think by and large what you have in front of you as to solar, not addressing wind, are fair and reasonable and workable from a developer standpoint. When you're developing zoning regulations, as I think your county attorney alluded to, you're trying to balance, it's about property rights. Zoning regulations are an imposition on private property rights, and you're trying to balance how far you go, how far you impose on private property rights, and protecting the public health, safety, and welfare of the county and its residents as a whole. All that to say, if you're going to send the matter back to the Planning Commission, I would ask that you also ask them to look at perhaps doubling the 4,000 acre limit. That limit has been talked about as about 1% of the land in the county or the agricultural land in the county. 8,000 acres would be about 2%. Looking at another way, solar would be prohibited across 98% of the agricultural land in the county, even with an 8,000 acre limit. I think with that limit, you don't need a limit on prime farmland. Those two things essentially do the same thing. right? They're protecting the agricultural viability and nature of the county. If you limit it to 4,000 acres and only 50% prime farmland, you're essentially limiting the industry to one project in Linn County. I would submit to you that that's just not fair to other landowners in Linn County who might want to put their land into a solar project as well, or to other developers. I understand and respect the point of not wanting the county covered in solar panels. I don't think going from 4,000 acres to 8,000 acres puts that in any way at play or at risk, but it does allow the two companies who you know today have an interest and have landowners of Linn County who have an interest in putting their land into this use to participate in the next step in the process, to come to you with an application and ask for a conditional use permit. So apologize, that was a little longer than I planned, but I would really ask that as it goes back to the Planning Commission with this knowledge of two projects, and I'll apologize, we were late to the party in this, if you will. I wish we had been involved going back to last fall. We might be talking about 8,000 acres now, but nonetheless, we're here. And if it's going back to the Planning Commission, I'd ask that you ask them to look at an 8,000 acre limit and taking away the prime farmland limit, because I think it's duplicative and a kind of a double whammy on landowners. Thank you.
Thanks.
Go ahead, come on up. State your name.
My name is Rich Morrell. I'm currently the chair of the Planning and Zoning Commission and have been a member since, I think, 2018 or 2019. I like Gary's suggestion. We have been very deliberate and very thoughtful throughout this whole process. I think there's a legitimate need to come back and have the commission look at some tweaks to this. We're as Mr. Kopp said, we're a reasonable group. Will Rogers once said the thing about common sense, it's just not that common. There's a lot of common sense on this group and with Mr. Kopp, and please just give us an opportunity to take one last look at this thing.
Thank you, Rich.
Go ahead, come on up, state your name. We're gonna try to get out of here, so we're gonna limit to a few minutes, please.
I'm gonna get that. Everybody's got to get it, you know. I'm Dave Berglund. I think you probably know who I am. And I'm on the planning committee. And I'm in agreement with the things that Charlene said. I don't want to bore you with all that. But I believe in landowners' rights. I believe if you have a farm and you want to build a pond on it, you should be able to build a pond as long as you don't back the water over on me. As long as you don't ruin my fence with it. You don't take down my trees. I think you should be able to do things on your property. I think if you have a lot in Sugar Valley, you ought to be able to do what you want to do on it, as long as you're not abusing your neighbor next door. I think this is the world we live in. And every time we start taking away things, everything we talk, first thing somebody's going to say, well, I'm allergic to corn. I'm going to come here and be beating on this thing, saying you can't plant any more corn because I have an allergy. I want to live in Linn County. I bought 5 acres, and I don't want. And we have a regiment of people here that, including most of us, that make their living off of this land. Unfortunately, I worked another job. I get a little cash in the mail. But a whole lot of people here depend on this land to support their lifestyle. And they did that in the 70s, 60s. You know, in the 70s, I bought land here for $200 an acre because nobody wanted it. And those people hung on and got through on 30-cent calves and held on to this land. And I believe that if they want to use their land, that's their right. But to use that land, it's like driving on our sheriff's roads. You got to do the speed limit. If you drive over the speed limit, no. And I believe if you want to use your land and the zoning regs are set up fair to everybody, you know, I don't want to see a windmill. I could care if I never see one, but I can go right out to 400 acres I have on the hill, and I can see 60 of them right just from my farm. So You know, we can't fix everything for everybody, but when we start taking landowners' rights away, then I voted against prohibition. I got upset when Mr. White stomped out of the meeting. I didn't like that. I thought it was childish. And one's enough.
Guys, this ain't a debate. We're gonna stop. I don't want to talk about this stuff right now. We deal with that in another time. And it doesn't need to be talked about. So if you got something, let's go ahead and state it, and we'll go from there.
Yeah, thanks. Josh Framel with Clearway. I'll keep this brief. I just want to second some of the comments that the previous representative from Baird Hole made, and would encourage some additional thought and some of the provisions that we've brought up as far as the solar regulations. I'm really excited about an opportunity to do some business in Linn County, and hope that we can find a common ground with some of these issues. We have been engaged. I've been engaged with the county when the ban was put in place on solar permits. I provided a lot of feedback over that time. So I guess one request that I have is if you're going to be going back and adding to the record, it'd be great to get some comments on the provisions that I had sent in, which I had distilled down for this group to a couple of the key ones, but I can provide copies to the commissioners if you'd like, as far as my overall comments, and we just request at a minimum that maybe some thought from the planning commission could be shared with me as to why all of those were not responded to or incorporated at all. So thank you very much.
Thank you, John.
My name's David Fisher from Centerville. We've heard time and time again at this meeting of the work 9 of our most solid citizens have done on the planning committee. I observed most of the meetings, and they put in a lot of effort, and they did a lot of due diligence. So that needs to be taken into court. I agree with Richard. I mean, if they have specifics they need to address, let's address them. I disagree with Charlene. I believe a prohibition is going to be easier for us to defend. I've reached out to a lawyer here in the state of Kansas that has been involved in wind for 20 years. A lot of people say he's the expert, and he clearly states that we are better off with a total prohibition than a bunch of regulations. You've seen what happens on the solar. Everybody wants to nitpick the regulations. You have this letter, I believe, in your packet. Please read it. It's very compelling. I'll just say in the first sentence of his letter, he says, I believe that an outright prohibition rather than regulations is the wiser course of actions for the county to go. So please take that into considerations. Thank you for your work.
I will mention, David, just so you know, since that letter is now mentioned in the meeting and the commissioners have a copy of it, is now public document. I want to make sure you're aware of it.
Yeah, I was aware of it before. Yeah, thank you.
You got anything else?
Yeah, and most everybody here understands this, but I just wanted to explain findings so people that are watching understand. There was a court case of Golden versus the city of Overland Park, and they've come up with 8 golden rules that when we listen to cases, conditional use permits, zoning changes, we follow those 8 golden rules. There may be more than the 8, but that's how findings are that's how they come up with their findings. So I just wanted to explain that it's not just because somebody says something. There's a court case that backs that.
So if we went from 4,000 or took away the 4,000 up to 8,000, that have findings.
At this point, if you're going to restrict the amount of land used, you need to make findings to support that. Now, whether it's 4,000 or 8,000, I mean, your findings might address the difference. I don't know.
But anything that restricts property rights should be supported by detailed findings so that you cannot be found to be unreasonable in your decision.
So my understanding is you guys are going to put together questions and then make a decision next Monday?
I think, next Monday, Gary's gonna draft something.
We'll approve what we're sending back to the zoning.
And I want to be clear that it was stated that we're all in favor of the prohibition. We want to figure out just findings. That's not true. I haven't made a decision on how I feel about it. I just keep asking myself, I want to know a rhyme to a reason. I appreciate all you guys' effort and everything like that. You've educated me a lot on it. And I just have a few questions myself is kind of what I'm going to add to what Gary's going to draft. But one thing I keep going back and ask myself is whenever the power plant was being talked about, were we going to try to prohibit that? I mean, or were we going to allow it to come in? I mean, because there's all kinds of pros and cons to it too. I mean, but now look at it's the backbone of the county. So I'm trying to think long-term here. And I don't know what the answer is right now. So I got to educate myself. So that's why I want to send it back to you guys with specific questions. So that's my reason. So I just wanted to be clear that I'm not here saying I'm for it or against it. So.
You have anything else for me?
You got anything?
I don't have any.
Thank you, commissioners.
Thank you, Derek.
Thank you. So next week, you'll draft questions, concerns, comments, and we'll discuss them, what the answer, what the questions are next week, and then we'll send it back.
You decide the exact form of what you want to send back.
We do have at least one department head coming in with a budget request next week, so those are gonna start coming pretty quickly now. Once we get started.
All right. Well, does anybody else have anything else? You guys got anything?
I don't.
So next week, we're gonna be talking about budget, or I guess we'll start, should we talk about how the process of how we're gonna do it and what we're gonna expect per budget, or we kind of already done that, or do people?
I sent out what I wanted people to submit with their requests, and I think I told them in that they need to be prepared to explain their reasoning on it, or something along those lines, but I mean, I do think you're gonna have a lot of the little tiny budgets there's really not much explanation to them. They shouldn't take long, but you're definitely gonna have some that you probably wanna look in depth at what's going on.
Is there a way for us to get those before they come in that day? Can we get it sent over to our SharePoint so that we can do our?
Get them ahead of time, I will be happy to put them out there.
Because I mean, the last thing I want to do is come in, somebody give us a number and we approve it that day. I mean, I want to be able to do my homework. We got a lot of stuff that I believe.
Nothing that says you have to approve it the day it's turned in.
Yeah.
But yes, I can send a note out and I will be happy to put those on your SharePoint if I get them ahead of time, but many times I don't have things before they get in here.
Thank you, David.
All right. Nobody has anything else? So I'll make a motion that we adjourn.
I'll second.
Motion made, second, all in favor?
Aye.